Michelle Marie McGrath. A very warm welcome to today's episode of Unclassified Woman. And today I'm talking to Clare Dubois, the founder of Treesisters. Treesisters is a feminine nature-based organisation inspiring the world's women to take shared leadership around tropical reforestation. Treesisters reflects Clare's exploration of the links between feminine consciousness and nature's intelligence. She and her team experiment overtly to discover how to call forth the unique capacities and creativity of women on behalf of trees. They aim to be funding 1 million trees a month by the end of 2017. Clare's known for her direct, catalytic energy, her whole systems approach to behaviour change, and her unending loyalty and love for the natural world. For 2 decades, she created behavioural change processes within the personal growth and social change sectors and volunteered for 3 years as the UK coordinator for a massive agro-forestry initiative in southern India called Project Greenhands, before she initiated Treesisters. In her own life, her aim is to reclaim balance, rediscover freedom and health, and to be walking permission for those who are fed up of being held back and just want to have a go. And Clare is a great example of this and role model for us all, as someone who's just thrown herself into her life mission. And for me, she explains very eloquently how female leadership and eco-revolution are a natural partnership. You can find out more about Treesisters at treesisters.org. I hope you feel inspired to take action by today's conversation and become a tree sister and join me and thousands of women around the world. Clare, so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
I have been looking forward to speaking to you for ages and hearing more about Treesisters. For anyone who's new to Treesisters and your work, are you able to share with us a little bit of your background, Clare, and how that came to be?
Well, my background was nothing like this. My background was very unecological. I was a business coach and an intuitive, and I worked a bit in education, and I think we could safely say my passion has always been consciousness, why we are the way we are, what needs to happen for us to transform. Like how do you liberate a human being? How do we move beyond what we've been conditioned with and how we think we are to what we really are? That's always been this kind of underlying drive in my life.
Yeah.
And that was going on for me when I went out to India. So I went out to India because of major health problems, and I decided to go and find myself an enlightened master because I just thought I've got to go find the management. Like I need to go. I need somebody who is, as close to God as you can get, who can basically whack me over the head with a mallet if I'm going to sort myself out. And so I was out in India at the Isha Foundation ashram in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
When I found Project Greenhands, and prior to finding Project Greenhands, which is this colossal agroforestry initiative in southern India, I had done a training called the Pachamama Symposium, the Awakening Dreamer Symposium, and I'd had like a complete mind-bending experience realizing the depth of ecological destruction that we're in. I knew it was bad, and I'd been having dreams about climate change for decades. But I had a proper educational experience which floored me. And I was out on the hunt. It was like I knew at that point that I had to do something. And actually, previously to that, I had done, there'd been a moment at a dance workshop where I had played in theatre, in ritual theatre, The Rape of the Earth, and I'd been the Earth.
Oh, gosh.
And that was in probably about 2001 or 2002. And that was when that was the key turned in me. It was like, I knew then that our planet was in peril and that you can't put a planet into therapy.
No.
And that if we took her too far, that was it. She would, the feedback loops would kick in and it would be done. And so I'd been searching, and that search took me to the symposium, and that search took me to India. And then in India, I found Project Greenhands, and all my lights went on because I'd known instinctively that I would be raising money for trees, but I just didn't know. I didn't know which trees or how I'd be raising money or what it would be. I just knew that was coming.
Yeah.
And I found this project. I was like, oh, here it is. This will do. This is great, because it was a combination of spirituality and social justice and ecology, and they were the three things that I'd really learnt were indivisible inside of the Pachamama Symposium. And so I started coordinating, being the UK coordinator for that initiative. And I was supposed to be fundraising for them, but actually I was completely obsessed with their social strategy. I wanted to understand how they were shifting consciousness in their country and taking people from a caste culture, completely disparate, separate, into a collectively mobilized, appropriate response to climate change. And on one hand, it was really easy over there. Well, no, nothing's easy over there, but it's easier.
I was thinking in India.
Well, it's easier when 9 of your major rivers have dried up and you're facing famine.
Yeah.
When it's in your face, the way it's in the Caribbean's face right now, or it's the whole world, as far as I can make it, is either on fire or underwater at the moment.
Well, it is, isn't it? It's interesting. There seems to be a lot happening of extreme weather, especially in the States and that at the moment as well. We're hearing a lot about it, although I know that, there's all sorts going on everywhere else as well.
Siberia has been on fire. Greenland's been on fire. Parts of Russia have been on fire. Lots of Europe is on fire. It's like there's places that shouldn't be on fire. And, a lot of the States, it's fairly natural, but my goodness, it's increasing. So, we're up against it. And I have been very aware of this and kind of banging my head against the wall going, how do you wake humanity up? Like, what's it actually going to take to stop watching it? And whilst we understand that we're a direct contributor to it, and do something about it. So for me, it's always been, we just got to reforest the tropics incredibly fast. We've got to reforest the rest of the planet as fast as we can, because the trees are our best hope of sequestering the carbon and stabilizing the climate whilst we wean ourselves off fossil fuels. But it was right at the point that I nailed the social strategy of Project Greenhands down to these 7 points, which were like, right, I've got it. Now I'm going to give it to someone. I'm going to find somebody to do a major global reforestation initiative. And then I had the car crash, which I was given Treesisters. And then it was handed to me fully formed, and that was it. Like, you have a job, go and do it. So that was how it happened.
And so when you had your accident crashing into a tree, because I've had that experience as well, funnily enough, years ago, did everything go into slow motion? It was a really almost out of body experience?
No, mine was a very in-body experience, and I was rushing, and I hit black ice, and I was down one of these tiny little British lanes, which has got, big walls on either side with big banks of soil and trees.
Right.
And I was literally banging off one side of the road and banging off the other side of the road and banging off the other side of the road, and I was heading straight for an edge, and I was totally in my body going, oh my God, I'm about to go off this edge, this really steep edge down a hill, which into a river. And I just happened to hit this tree, or I could say this tree decided to stop me. It was a perfect point of, okay, are you going to go off an edge, or are you going to pay attention to the trees? It's another way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And anyway, I didn't have a choice because this tree stopped me. And at the point of impact, there was literally a blinding flash of white light inside of the car, and inside the white light were two words, the experiment, literally hanging inside the windscreen of the car, like in between me and the windscreen. And I'm looking at these two words, and it was in New Times italics, and I was even thinking, I hate that font. Don't like that font. And
I love the way that happens.
It's so bizarre. It's just like everything is so bizarre. Like, yeah, of course there's these words hanging in front of me. And then this voice started talking to me, and it was a male voice, and it said, humanity is running out of time, but it's not over yet. It's going to take everyone rising to the challenge to get through what's coming. The single greatest threat facing humanity is fear of failure. But you can get over fear of failure by calling everything you do an experiment, because you can't fail an experiment. You can only learn.
Wow.
And at which point I was like, wow, that's brilliant. And I said, what's the experiment? And back came, you have to reforest the tropics within 10 years.
Wow. And when was this, Claire?
This was rather too long ago. This was 2009, December 2009. And we've only planted 1 million trees in that time. So it's like, so anyway, rather than say, I haven't done enough, I'll say what happened from there, because as far as I'm concerned, life knew who it was giving the project to. And somebody has since said to me, it wasn't because you were fit for the job, it was because you were willing. And I sure as hell didn't feel fit for the job. And at the time I wasn't even willing. So I'm sat there wrapped around this tree, and I've just been delivered this message. And when I heard that, you've got to reforest the tropics within 10 years, then my life flashed before my eyes. But it wasn't like a near death flashing, because I've almost died before and I've had a near death. It wasn't that. It was, I suddenly understood why everything in my life had happened the way it had and why it was taking me to that point, which completely infuriated me, because it was, and also like, it was like everything collided, like my low self-esteem and my lack of confidence, my rage at the world, my fear of climate change, my consistent over the previous 3 years banging on saying, I know I'm supposed to be doing something, but I don't know what it is, and begging life to tell me what it was, and why isn't life telling me what it is? And then life told me what it is, and I said, no, sorry. I didn't mean anything like that. That's you can't ask me to do that. But at the same time, I knew life was basically saying, what are you going to do? Are you going to carry on living like an apology the way you've always lived, and believing that you're nothing, and letting your fear control your life, and play it small and basically hate yourself? Because that was largely how I used to be. Or are you going to actually discover what you're made of? Like, put down your past, stop whining about it, stop believing that you are what that told you that you are, and discover what you actually are, which is what my life is about anyway. That's what I've always been fascinated about with people. How do we drop what we're not and discover who we are? So life was kind of really calling me on it. Are you going to show up?
Yeah. And
I said, no, I'm not. I just it's too big. You can't ask me to reforest the tropics. You just can't do that. But the voice ignored me, and it continued. And it basically said, you have to mobilize the women. The women are the missing piece. Women are the womb carriers, and Earth is womb. Women and Earth carry a common history. Both have been subjugated. Both have been turned into property. Both have been de-wilded. Both have been taught that they're less than and trashed. And women understand the cycles of life. Women understand that you have to breathe in order to breathe out, that the renewal phases of nature are vital, that you can't push the landscape all the time. And yet humanity has become what they called an out-breath culture. You're pushing all the time. You're not allowing for renewal phases. You have to make it as normal to give back to nature as it currently is, to take nature for granted.
Yeah.
You have to create a crowdfunding mechanism. You've got to make it normal for everybody to give money for trees. It's called Treesisters. Literally, this is how it went.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I was just taking dictation and I was sitting there having this lesson about what feminine consciousness was. And then this voice said, women have to remember what they are. You have to reinstate feminine consciousness or it's over. And that was it. End of transmission.
Yeah. And yet, isn't it interesting, like some of the things you were just talking about then is because we are so used to being in that busy mind headspace, or, that we really struggle with that balance of being more in that feminine receptive space. It's like, nature has those natural cycles and seasons, and yet often we know that we can be so productive in just like having a rest or having a break or learning to receive. And yet it's not something that necessarily comes naturally to us. So it's almost like we are unlearning all of these patterns. In the way we treat ourselves, our bodies, the way we treat Mother Earth, and this almost treating ourselves and the Earth as like an inanimate object.
Well, it's not almost. We are.
Yeah.
She is perceived as a resource to be used.
Yeah.
We have dislocated ourselves so completely from the reality, which is we are her.
Yeah.
We are bits of earth walking around with souls inside. And if we trash her air, we trash ourselves. If we trash her water, we trash ourselves. If we trash her soil, we trash ourselves. We trash her weather.
Yeah.
Right now, we are. I can be very vociferous about this and fairly unpleasant because I just get so stressed about it. But generally speaking, I have to try and be polite. But how we are living is pure self-abuse.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. And it's not just self-abuse. We are destroying life for all future generations. So we can say, I love my children. I love my children. But look at the future we're creating. And we are literally stealing from them. We're stealing what we had. We're stealing seasons. We're stealing fresh water. We're stealing any form of reliance on the natural world. This generation that are growing up now are not going to know where their food is coming from the way we're going.
Yeah.
And the reality of feedback loops, which we mostly know about because the scientists have been warning us for 20 odd years, is it doesn't get better. It gets worse. So, I live in this kind of state where I'm saying it's still worth having a go. We've got to have a go. We've got to have a go. And we have no idea what we're actually capable of because we use a fragment of our brain and our consciousness is still mostly a mystery to us. And actually, we carry the DNA of every living thing inside our bodies as humans. It's like we have no idea how we can awaken. What we know is that we have to, and really fast, because the Kogi, who are Colombia's most profound spiritual indigenous leaders up on the mountains there, say we've got approximately 7 years. That's it. 7 years to turn everything around, or it's over for our species and most of the others on this planet.
And yet people are still in so much denial, aren't they? If you think about the people that don't even believe that climate change exists, like that's what I find really baffling. This complete denial.
Yeah, but all I would say is, okay, and those of us that aren't have to do something. Let's just focus on the fact that there is a huge awakening happening, and we have to give that added momentum. And everyone that's in denial, okay, just like they can stay in denial. It's like if you can't handle it, you can't handle it. But if you can, you have to do something.
Yeah, and so that leads us to tell us about your Million Trees project, because I know that you have reached past the 1 million mark now, that number, but I know that obviously you've got a much bigger goal than that.
Well, we've decided, it was a big deal for me this year in America, driving through Colorado and realizing that the tree die-off in Colorado is even worse than in California. It's over 600 million trees have died in California. It's over 800 million trees in Colorado, and it's going so fast. And then realized that actually it's the whole Rocky Mountain forest, the whole West Coast forest of America is dying. And it's epic. I mean, it's like, it's hard for me to get my head around. Like, I was in pieces for 3 weeks after that. And it's like, what is the appropriate scale actually that we should be playing at, whether people are awake to it or not? And we were going to go for the million trees a month goal, but actually we're going straight for the billion trees a year.
Yeah.
And I have no idea how long that's going to take us to get. What I know is that we have to get there. So in real terms for us, that means 2 million women or men deciding to make giving money for trees every month fundamental to their lives. It's like actually deciding to give back to nature as an ongoing thing, to start, accounting for everything that we take. And that's not going to be a gesture of, oh yeah, I have to give something for trees, I'll give a $5. It's like, we can't do this. Yes, I'll give 1% for the planet. It's got to be, what is the absolute most we can give back? Do you want a future? It's as simple as that. So, when we've got 2 million members actively giving to trees, we'll be planting 1 billion trees a year. And I'd like to think that we can manifest sufficient miracles to be able to do that in 3 years. And I've no idea. Could take us 10. But if it's 3 years, then I'd feel that the job I was given, I can say to life, yes, I'm taking it seriously.
Yes.
Yeah, we're trying.
Yeah. And so what do you feel has been like your biggest challenge in trying to, spread the message? Because I know that on your site, like it says that Treesisters' approach is the balance of inner and outer, spiritual and practical, behavioural and ecological pathways towards that shift. This is a process of discovering how to engage, nourish, inspire and activate women into their unique gifts and generosity on behalf of themselves, each other and the forests that we love and need. So what is it about that you find the most difficult in communicating in a way that people take seriously and think, shit, yes, I need to do something?
All of it.
Yeah.
There's none of it that's easy, because, I mean, the reality is, when you talk about what's happened to women and you talk about what's happened to nature, it is a fundamental aberration. It's an absolute aberration. Women are the life givers on this planet. We're the womb carriers.
Yeah.
And that means we hold the sacred crucible of creation inside our bodies. Mm. There is nothing more sacred than the womb. Really, I truly believe it, because, science still doesn't understand the process that happens in there. It's like this miracle. And yet women, for whatever reason, have been taught that we're second-class citizens. Our menstrual cycle has been cursed, literally. It is the curse, not it's this miracle that if you understand it, you have got access to levels of power through connection to life that you would never dream of. It's like, no, well, how many ways can you subjugate women? And then how many ways can you subjugate nature? And when those things are both what we are most connected to, we're fundamentally cutting off from ourselves. So there you have one of the greatest wounds humanity has ever undergone. Try and point people to the greatest wound they've ever gone to, and they're not going to thank you. They're not going to walk in going, yay, let's look at this thing that has caused more agony, more shame, more horror. And then if you try and turn towards it, you're called a hippie, or you're shamed, or you're this, or you're that. And if you try and express your love for the trees or the ritual around nature, it's considered woo-woo and backward and ridiculous. And the only thing that's going to solve this is technology and more stuff and the men. And, it's like trying to say to women, we are not what we've conditioned to be. We are so much more. There's a proportion of society that's ready to hear that. There's a proportion of society that's already deeply embodying that and has storming off down the rewilding pathway, flouting what we've been taught. And the majority are still sitting in just trying to get by, just trying to survive in this crazy world, just trying to make their husbands happy and be the appropriate woman that we've been taught that we are. And so when I start saying, how we're living is upside down as women, and how we're living as humans is upside down, and how we're living in relationship to nature is upside down. They're three messages that, unless you are profoundly wanting to transform your life and have massive change, they're not easy. They're not easy. And, which is one of the reasons why I think it's taken me so long, because I didn't really understand what it meant to be a woman. And how could I possibly talk about feminine consciousness until I'd woken up? And I'm still waking up, and I'll probably spend the rest of my life trying to understand what all of this means. But you have to, well, here's what I think. I think deep inside, there is only one truth, and that is our indivisibility from nature. And so there is a way that you can ring a tuning fork, if you can speak clearly enough, if you can embody it fully enough, where your messaging can get through, where it just lands as truth. That is what I am constantly striving for. Like, how do we articulate this in a way that just breaks through denial and overwhelm and fear, and just hits the part of you that goes, yeah, I know. Okay, I'm going to do something. Yeah, I can't do this anymore. You're right. Yeah, this is crazy. Okay, I'm going to do something. That's what I'm reaching for. And it feels like drip by drip by drip by drip, we're starting to get there.
Yeah.
And it feels like Irma and Jose and all these other hurricanes and the fires and everything. It's like you have to literally be buried in the sand to not see what's going on.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as you say, it can be quite a process in understanding intellectually all of these things, but then really embodying that and choosing to make, really different choices in your life can be, again, it's all part of that process, isn't it, of understanding at a deeper level. For the purpose of people that don't quite get it, and that how the planting of trees and increasing that, all the reforestation is, cooling the planet down. And that's obviously what we need. I know a lot of people don't quite get how that works. So can you just talk a little bit about that in very sort of, ways that people can understand?
What I can say is trees absorb carbon dioxide. One way of looking at a tree is that it is carbon made visible.
Yeah.
They absorb carbon dioxide, and they go through this process in which they transpire. So they release water vapor as part of the photosynthesis process that their leaves do in the creation of starch from CO2 and water and light, essentially. And the starch helps build the body and goes down into the roots to partly feed the mycelial network of fungus that links all the trees together in a forest. I mean, how forests operate are just extraordinary.
Yeah. They really work as a community, don't they?
They're completely a community, and they take care of each other. A forest needs its own weather, its own microclimate. And so if a tree falls in a forest, it means the whole forest becomes vulnerable, because if you've got really strong winds, a forest is much more likely to withstand it than a single tree standing. And if there's a gap in a forest, then the wind can start to get in and start to play havoc. And it can also change the temperature in the forest. They need it moist. They need it cooler. And so they will literally support each other to thrive and survive. And the mycelial network, of fungus that links all plants, actually, they're discovering it's not just trees, is the communication, one of the primary communication devices between the trees. And they talk to each other, and they let each other know what's happening. They let each other know if pests are coming, and they let each other know if they need to change their chemical structure to handle those pests. And if a tree is dying, the others will feed it. And if a tree dies, it'll feed the others. But with photosynthesis, trees transpire. They give out water vapor, and that is a cooling effect. So when it comes to, let's look at the Amazon rainforest, for example. The Amazon rainforest is the size of the face of the moon.
Wow.
And over 40% of it is now degraded. They're saying if there's much more goes, the entire forest will destabilize. But in the form that it is at the moment, when a forest transpires, or when a tropical forest transpires, water vapor is released. That's why they're called rainforests. They are perpetually cloudy. They're perpetually raining because of the water that the trees themselves release because there's so many trees and there's so much heat. They're doing this consistent cycle of pulling up water, transpiring through their leaves. The water vapor goes up, it forms clouds, it rains, it comes back down, it goes back up, it comes back down, it goes back up. And that rising and falling of the water vapor is like a pump. It's like a heartbeat. And that pump essentially pumps what they call these flying rivers of water vapor, pure tree processed water that has gone through trees countless times, absolutely pure water that becomes colossal flying rivers that feed rainfall around the planet. So Brazil currently has been having massive droughts because what they call interruptions of that pump are starting to happen because enough of the forest has been destroyed that it can lose a pump. It can lose a beat. It's like having arrhythmia. And when the pump gets disrupted, the flying rivers get disrupted and the rainfall conveyor belts get disrupted. So there's multiple things happening. You've got the fact that the trees absorb carbon dioxide. So we understand that the fossil fuels that we are burning pump the carbon into the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide. It's a very blanketing gas. So it basically is getting trapped in the atmosphere, and that is causing the heat that we are producing to get trapped, essentially. It's the carbon dioxide itself is causing the increase in temperature. So we either need to get off fossil fuels tomorrow, which is not going to happen, or we need to radically reduce fossil fuel consumption and therefore carbon dioxide emissions, which if you know, unless you're on solar or wind, you boil your kettle, you dry your hair with a hairdryer, you get in your car, you watch television, you turn a light switch on. Every single thing is putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Whilst we are weaning off, which we have to and really fast, that carbon dioxide is either dissolving into the oceans and causing acidification and warming, which is killing the coral, which is basically killing the bottom of the food chain in the ocean, so it'll essentially kill the oceans, or it's heating us. So the only way to cool us essentially is to lock that carbon into fast-growing tropical trees. Tropical trees grow faster than any other because it's a year-long growing season, for one thing. And they just grow incredibly fast because it's hot and wet, or it should be hot and wet. And there's other ways, you can do it with kelp. Kelp is an incredibly strong carbon sequesterer in the oceans. You can do it with soil. You can do it with various building materials, actually. But essentially, kelp and trees, forest, are the most effective sequesterers, they call it, of carbon, locking carbon down. And so that essentially means that instead of warming, you're putting it into the trees, which are coolers because of the water vapor that they produce and the fact that they pull the carbon out of the atmosphere.
Well, that was very eloquently explained for somebody who just said, I'm not going to be able to go into the chemistry of it. So I love that.
Well, chemistry is, carbon and oxygen and nitrogen and all what gets locked down and how do you create the sugars and all of that. And I can give you the building blocks.
No,
Those are the building
perfect.
Blocks.
Yeah, exactly. So that was exactly what I was kind of after, really. As we really take responsibility for what's going on in the planet, and again, women really taking responsibility for their own lives, their own bodies, their own choices, their own paths, you can really see how it makes complete sense, and the whole female leadership and a green revolution, the way they come together and work hand in hand, really, it seems obvious when you look at it like that.
Yeah. I mean, taking care of our own bodies, taking care of ourselves, is absolutely crucial for us to be able to de-stress our nervous systems sufficiently to start to receive the greater wisdom of the natural world, to start to be able to listen and feel. If we're running too fast, we're just on a conveyor belt. You can't listen to your intuition if you're running at high speed and all you're plugged into is technology. There is a completely different frequency of intelligence that is available to us moment to moment through our own bodies and our own bodies as part of the natural world. They are indivisible.
Yeah.
There is a limitless source of intelligence out there. The creativity that is moving the planets in these impeccable orbits, that has created all these different solar systems, that has created the miracle of our bodies, the miracle of nature. That intelligence is available to us if we can just learn how to open to it and receive it. There will be solutions to what we're facing, and those solutions will be found in nature.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? If you switch off, you get offline and you're out in the bush, out in a forest for a day or even a couple of days, the difference in how you feel. Every time I do that, I go, oh my goodness, I can't believe the clarity, the solutions to things that just are there and seem really obvious once you've actually gotten rid of all the other distractions and the noise. And then it's oh, of course, this is obvious. But then it's amazing how quickly we sort of forget that and get caught up in the day-to-day nonsense, really.
Yeah. I mean, I had a 9-day nature connection experience 3 years ago, I think it was. I had a really bad shock in my life. And I wrote about it. There's a blog on the Treesisters blog called, I think it's Grace and Grit. Maybe it's Grace and Grit. And it's really worth reading because I won't go into it deeply now, but I had sufficient a shock that it shifted my consciousness and I merged with the natural world. It poured into me and I had my first, more than a glimpse. I was there for 9 days and it was extraordinary. I had no fear anymore. I belonged like I'd never belonged. There was no insecurity. I couldn't even remember what the feeling was. But nor was there arrogance. There was extraordinary access to power, but it wasn't my power. So there wasn't this feeling of fear of power or fear of abusing power because it was nature.
Yeah.
And I was part of nature. And I knew, because this happened over a holiday, and I knew that as soon as I sat down at my computer, it would go. And sure enough, that first day back at work, and I lost it. And I was grief-stricken, absolutely grief-stricken. But simultaneously, I knew if I felt that before, I can get there again. And I need to be able to get there again and stay there regardless of what I'm doing in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. And one of the things you were talking about before was the womb power. And I do a lot of work with womb awakening with clients, really connecting it in, whether you've got that, a physical uterus or not. It's still that energy, that power, that creative source, which we can never be disconnected from, really. It's always there if we choose to connect, very consciously with that. And so I work with a lot of women who are creating and birthing things in different ways and, have all sorts of different various life paths with alternative meaning and things that are fulfilling to them, not necessarily in the traditional sense, because like you say, often people will avoid going into where their deepest wound is. And because we've had so much trauma associated with the menstrual cycle, with sexuality, with being in a female body, often people do feel uncomfortable and overwhelmed at the thought of being really deeply in their body, accessing everything that's there and available to them. So how do you feel about that topic? Because I know I've worked with a lot of women who are childless or child-free, and of course, every story is completely different. There's a multitude of factors and reasons that go into that. Every woman's story is completely different and equally valid and sacred. But I think it's interesting that we're at this point where we're really breaking out of these, imposed molds and letting go of a lot of these stereotypes and really trying to forge a new path that's involving feminine consciousness and leadership in a way that's much more healthy and community based. Sorry, I rambled on a bit there, but you know what I'm saying.
It's a huge topic.
It's
huge. And it's probably the most complex it's ever been.
Yeah.
Now, because I don't know about, God, where do you start? I'm looking at Kate Windsor producing child number 3 at a time when we have absolutely no capacity to guarantee a child a safe future.
Yeah.
And so on one hand, you've got however many cultures on this planet where women still are property.
Yeah.
They have no volition over their own bodies, and their only function is to produce the next generation.
Yeah.
They don't have a choice. Like, there are millions of women on this planet that have absolutely no choice in their lives. And that makes it even more important to me that those of us that do have a choice, that do have volition, that do have a colossal privilege, the privilege of food every day, the privilege of a roof over our heads, the privilege of access to information, the privilege of the right to vote. You know, these are colossal privileges in a world where women are horrendously abused still.
Yeah.
And considered, you know, just as important as cattle.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So on one level, I think the more we can wake up to the reality that as Western women, we are living a blessed life unlike any previous generations, essentially, right now. But that life sits in the context of a planet that is destabilizing. So there's multiple levels at which these choices suddenly matter. You know, I know my husband back in the 60s was basically part of a movement to be childless because they saw back then what was happening with the population. I don't think you're never going to take the desire to have children out of a woman. That's never going to go anywhere. It's like we're built for it. We're, you know, the creative process, the desire to birth a child is absolutely intrinsic to women. But what's interesting is it's not intrinsic to all women.
Well, that's right. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Not everybody does feel that urge. They might feel the urge to create, but it's not always in that form, which is fascinating.
And I remember my spiritual teacher basically saying, because I asked him at one point, you know, should I be a mother? Because I was a really complex case. I had longed to be pregnant all my life, but I didn't want the child. And I could not figure out what was going on with me. And I had a very harmed body from an extremely abusive childhood. And I'd miscarried twice. I miscarried at 18 and I miscarried at 26, and a bad miscarriage the second time. Neither time was an intentional pregnancy. But I didn't know whether I was actually physically capable of holding a child. And I've been told subsequently by osteopaths and people, basically, no, your body can't do it. So I didn't have the choice, essentially, to whether I was going to be a mother or not. My body was too battered. But I still had this yearning to be pregnant. And I remember him looking at me and he said, if every single cell in your body is screaming to be a mother, be a mother. If any part of you is questioning it, don't.
Yeah.
And I remember being furious with him for saying that to me. Absolutely furious. Like, because of course there's a doubt in every woman. You know, there's some doubt or some concern, or maybe for some who are just completely know that it's for them. They completely know it's for them. But for a lot of us, it's kind of like there's doubts, and now there's more doubts than ever because of the future that we're creating. But it's a big thing. Yeah. You know, I still fear coming around a corner within my own psyche and realizing that I know, you know, from a lifetime of trying to recover from what I went through, not just in this lifetime, that a lot of my fears of having the child are because I've had so many children taken away from me in past lives. It's like what comes next after you have a baby has been so horrendous for me so many times that my psyche longs for the chance to have a baby, but then is terrified of what comes next.
Yeah.
But anyway, life kind of took that out of my hands. I have a body that can't do it. And And then I was given Treesisters.
Yeah.
And this is one hell of a baby. I mean, this is everything that parenting is about. I mean, it's like it has stretched me to the absolute limits. It's taken every part of my life force. It's forced me up against all my edges. It's caused me to have to deal with all my shadow and my shit. There's no getting away from it. It's relentless. I can't, you can't put a child away and walk away from it when it's difficult. You're in there. Like, that's it. This is your job. And I couldn't walk away from Treesisters if the world fell on my head. It's like, I love this world so profoundly, deeply, and I am so committed to the healing of humanity, and the mess of humanity is through the patriarchal rejection of the feminine and everything that is life-based. And unless we deal with that, we're gone. And I don't want us to be gone. I don't want humanity's whole historical journey of evolution to end in a burnt up planet with a few, terrorized survivors saying, oh my God, why didn't we try when we knew what was happening? Like, that's not where I can't accept that as a future. I cannot accept that as a future. And so my life is given. I will sit here and bellyache and try and find different ways of putting it. And so this Billion Trees campaign that we're about to do isn't just a Billion Trees campaign. It's a consciousness shift campaign. We're about to do a 6-week internal journey around what we call the Treesisters map of 5 choices, which we're also calling the blueprint of a restorer species. And I'm saying, right, are you prepared to look at all the places where we are held in suspension and where we are essentially watching what's going on but unable to take appropriate action? Are you willing to come on a journey with me to look at what it is inside you that is prepared to keep going on in that way? And are you willing to transform? And so this inner journey will start, I think, around the 30th of October and will last for 6 weeks. And that will have teachings. It'll have 6 major global meditations where we're actually going in and we're trying to essentially twiddle the acupuncture needles inside our own consciousness to see whether we can shift. And the whole journey is a complete process of moving around this extraordinary framework that we have, that was also given to me in the same way that Treesisters was given to me in the crash. 9 months later, I was given this framework, and that's what we're basing this whole journey on. So I'm going to throw everything I've got at this. It's like, we've got a map, we're going to bring it. We've got a solution, we're bringing it. We've got a request, we're making it. And I want every single flipping woman on this planet to recognize that as a life creator and a life giver, we're also life protectors, and wake up and stop just taking from this planet. Realize that it is a profound privilege to be able to give back. No woman would survive if all that happened was her family took from her all the time, took, never fed her, never watered her, never loved her. But that's what we're expecting our planet to do. Mother us, we'll take everything from you, but we're not going to give you anything. There's no wonder she's destabilizing. You can't do that to a being. You can't do it.
Yeah, so true, Claire. Well, thank you. That was really powerful, and I feel that that's a great place to pause so that people can really take that in. And I look forward to that 6-week journey myself. I think that's a wonderful way to bring the end of, the year to completion as well, to really sit in that space and make some really serious decisions about our lives on a personal basis and what we can do to contribute to this collectively.
Yeah. It's a good time to do it. It's like we're starting, the first week is called Reveal. It's Reveal, Embrace, Embody, Activate, Shine, and Belong. Those are the 7 weeks.
Beautiful.
And the first week, Reveal, lands at that time of the year when the veils are the thinnest, when we get a chance to really ask to be shown who and what we really are and let go of what we're not. And that feels It feels more important to me than anything I could express. And if you want to have a look at it, just go to billiontrees.me, www.billiontrees.me, and you'll see the layout as it's emerging. The campaign is still forming as we speak, but
amazing.
you'll
and I'll
see
share the link to
the journey
that.
will be on. Thank you.
No, that's great. Thank you. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of your passion and your wisdom. You know, I feel really excited actually about how that's going to go out into the world and multiply and grow over the coming couple of years. And I feel there will be actually a lot of change in a really positive way. But yeah, we just have to do it, don't we? We just have to make that commitment to ourselves and the sort of and the people we really want to be, rather than just talking about it.
Yeah, it's time. It's time. Simple. Got to do it. So I would like to invite every single person that's listening to this, please become a tree sister. Join the family. Make it normal to start giving back to life. Know that you are transforming lives in Brazil and India and Kenya and Madagascar, and we're soon about to bring on more projects in Nepal and Cameroon. It matters that we take care of our world, and you can do it so beautifully and so generously and so inspiringly through Tree Sisters, along with a whole global network of women who are doing the same. So please join us. Just go to treesisters.org/join and become part of the family.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Unclassified Woman. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. For information on events and services, connect with Michelle at michellemariemcgrath.com.